Hello everyone, Seraphin here, welcome back for some more Pokemon Soul Silver. When I last left you guys, we had just made it into Violet City. Arguably the first major city that we've come to. Previously, we went through Cherry Grove, which was kind of minor and didn't have a lot going on. Violet's got a lot going on. So there'll be a lot to see and do here in this city, and we're going to get right into that. And we can talk to some of the people in here. I think there's some people in here to give us interesting information. So, this guy's saying there was some Team Rocket thugs that were hanging out some years ago. A boy did a wonderful job and Team Rocket was disbanded. Well, they don't really explain how that worked, but... Oh, here's something interesting. So, traded Pokemon might not listen to you right away, especially if they're high level. And they don't listen to you because you don't have enough gym badges. So, what he's talking about, if you receive Pokemon in a trade, and it's a really high level, and it's like higher than where you normally progress at that point in the game, the Pokemon won't listen to you. Because it's not you're not the original trainer. So it'll like, when you tell it what to do in battle, it'll be like, nah, I don't feel like it, it'll use a different move, or sometimes it just won't do anything. This guy, I don't know what his deal is. You tell me what you think of me. No, I'm busy. I got other stuff to do. Well, I mean, yeah, I literally just said that. Alright, bye. Anyway, what's this guy doing up here? What kind of trainer do I like best? I don't really like any of these, so I'm just gonna leave. What that, by the way, will do is when you go into the trading room, your character sprite will change based on how you answer that question. You won't just be this default trainer sprite. You'll look like one of the other kinds of trainers if you want. But I don't really care so much, so... Oh, there's ghost-type Pokemons in the tower. Normal types have no effect. Yep, so if you try to use a normal-type move on a ghost, it'll go right through them. Imagine that. Same with fighting types, because you can't punch or kick a ghost. Do you have Bellsprout? Want to trade for my Onix? I don't have one. I could go get one. So there are these in-game trades, too, in every game, which are nice, because it normally will let you get access to Pokemon that you might otherwise be able to get, or at least not very easily. Also, this guy is telling you that when you trade a Pokemon, it will grow a lot quicker. And what that means is, if you get a Pokemon from a different trainer, they will get 1.5 times the number of experience points. So they grow quite a bit faster, actually. There's a rock here. Pokemon might be able to smash it. I can't right now, though. That'll change later. And here we have a Pokemon school run by some fellow named Earl. And Earl is actually hiding over here. I don't know what he's doing over here, but this is Earl. And he likes to spin around a lot. No, I did not battle the gym leader, nor did I defeat him. Study shall you. So you notice this guy spins a lot. I don't know where he gets all the energy from. He also talks like kind of like Yoda almost. Here, teacher, I am. Good at it. You study here. So yeah, Earl thinks he's Yoda. Spinning Yoda, I guess. Anyway, so this is the Pokemon school. Nothing to do really in here. Do I want to join a group? What? No. I don't know what he's talking about, actually. He's taking notes. Alright, that's cool. Something in here tells you something cool, I think. Oh yeah, this guy's talking about how you can have Pokemon hold items. What does that mean? Well... Oh, come on, I didn't mean to click on that again. And then if this girl's talking about abilities, I'll get into that in a second. Held items are neat. We don't actually have any at the moment, I don't think. They would be in this berry pouch, or something similar to that effect. So Pokemon can hold on to an item, and they actually will be able to use it during battle on their own, rather than having you tell them to use it. Berries are a good example of that. If you get berries and give them to your Pokemon, they will automatically eat the berry and gain the benefit of them when the appropriate trigger happens. So for example, a regular berry, like an Oran berry, when a Pokemon goes below half health, they'll automatically eat the Oran berry and heal themselves. It doesn't waste a turn, and it doesn't require you having to go into your bag and command them to do it or anything like that. There's also some other items that will like raise their damage potential. There's a lot of really unique and cool and powerful items that are used in the competitive scene, but they're not quite so usable during the actual story mode of the game. But we'll get to that some other time. So here, this blackboard has all of the different status effects that can happen to your Pokemon. We've got Poison. Poison is not really all that bad. It sounds worse than it is. It just means that at the end of every round, you lose 1/16 of your total health. Not that bad. Maybe it's 1/8, I'm not sure. At any rate, that's all it does. Paralysis is pretty nasty, so if you get paralyzed, you can still potentially act. There is like a 50-50 chance that you won't get to attack. You'll just waste your turn because you're fully paralyzed, quote-unquote. And also, being paralyzed cripples your speed. So if you rely on speed to go first and land hits before your opponent, if you're paralyzed, you're very likely not going to be able to do that anymore. I believe it cuts your speed stat by like 75%. It's really bad. And paralysis does not go away between battles, neither does poison. In fact, the only one of these that does go away between battles is confusion, which isn't even listed on here. Sleep isn't too bad either. Well, I mean, it is and it isn't. Eventually, your Pokemon will shake off sleep automatically. They'll just wake themselves up after a few turns, but while you're asleep, you can't do anything. You can't fight, you can't switch out. Well, I guess you can switch out if you're asleep. But there's a couple of moves that actually will allow you to use them while you're asleep, like Snore is an example of that. So sleep is interesting. Burn is very bad. Burn is like poison in that you will lose 1/8 of your health every round, but also burn reduces your attack stat. So if you're a physical-oriented Pokemon, like a Machamp or something like that, and you get burned, well, suddenly you're hitting like a waffle. You're not hitting very hard at all. Not as much, anyway. It's like cut your attack in half or something like that. It's really bad. And it hurts you, so it's terrible. Frozen is arguably the worst one. If you're frozen, you can't do anything. It's just like sleep. You can't move, you can't fight, you can't do anything. And you don't shake it off automatically. There are a couple of ways that being frozen can go away. If you get hit by a fire-type attack, it'll thaw you out. That's one way. I think it actually is possible to get shaken out of being frozen nowadays. Earlier on in Generations 1 and 2, if you were frozen, that was it. You were done. Your Pokemon is now useless, unless you had a way to cure it. And then finally, again, Confusion's not on here. Confusion is one of those status effects that's not really all that detrimental. It doesn't even have an indicator that your Pokemon is confused, because outside of battle, you can't be confused. It just goes away. The rest of these are all retained outside of battle, so you need to heal them. Confusion is just a 50-50% chance that when you go to use a move, you'll hurt yourself instead. Like, you'll just punch yourself in the face. And it's based off your own Pokemon's attack stat that's confused, so if you've got a Pokemon who's confused with a lousy attack stat, you just kind of waffle yourself and doesn't really do much. If you're like a Machamp or something and you punch yourself in the face, and it hurts a lot more. In fact, there is a move in this game called Swagger, where it drastically increases the attack stat of the Pokemon you target with it, but it also confuses them. Which is really neat. I just found a Pokeball at random. I didn't know it was there, by the way. So sometimes if you just, like, investigate the ground where you just looks like empty space, sometimes you'll find hidden items there. There's actually a ton of them scattered all over the world. I know where some of them are, but not all of them. This is Sprout Tower. We don't want to go in here necessarily just yet. I want to go capture some more things real quick first. Spearow is going to make quick work of that place, by the way. A lot of Bellsprouts in there, and they're all grass type, which means they're weak to flying, and Spearow knows peck. So, speaking of pecking things, we're going to go catch some more stuff out here in the wilderness that I didn't get to grab the first time. I did grab a Weedle, but I know there's Bellsprouts for sure in this grass, and I think there's also a couple other things. I've already got a Weedle, but I'm not going to turn down a chance to get some free experience for my Burb, because Burbs are great. The nice thing about him being flying type is that peck is extra powerful. In fact, why don't I show you guys the status screen that tells you all of this physical versus special nonsense. So let's look at the Pokemon real quick. Particularly, let's look at Spearow here. So we can see Spearow has a bashful nature. When I said that I could tell what their nature was before, I don't know if you noticed, but let's look at Chikorita, for example. Chikorita has an improved attack stat and a reduced speed stat. And the way that you can tell, if you look really close at the word attack, it's actually highlighted red. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's not very vibrant or obviously red, but it is red. And when you see a stat name like that in red, it means it's increased 10% as a result of the nature. And when you see the stat in blue, which is speed at the bottom, that means it is reduced 10% as a result of the nature. But if we look at Spearow, he doesn't have a red or a blue. So he's completely neutral stat-wise. So that's what Bashful is. There's actually 5 different natures that are just neutral. They don't increase or decrease anything. So those are nice. Generally speaking, it's preferable to have an increase in something you're good at and a decrease in something you don't use. So, for example, if we got a Jolly Spearow or an Adamant Spearow, that would have been ideal, but just because we didn't get one, it's not that big a deal. Adamant, by the way, it increases physical attack but reduces special attack. Spearow doesn't need special attack. He has no special moves. And his special attack's really lousy anyway. That's like his dump stat, quote-unquote. You generally want to avoid reducing defense if at all possible, simply because, it doesn't, you may not want to focus on increasing it, but you don't really want to lose defense either because it affects your survivability. The main ones you want to worry about increasing or decreasing as a result of your nature is your attack, your special attack, and your speed. Some Pokemon really, really value speed, and others don't care about it. So, also, there is no nature that affects your HP. There is no HP affecting nature, so you don't worry about that. Let's take a look at the moves, though, that Mr. Spearow here has. So we see here that Flying type is associated with Peck here. It is a Flying type move. You'll see next to the category there is that orange burst. That indicates it is a physical attack. So that's how you can tell. If it were a special move, we don't actually have anybody with special moves in our team just yet. But if it was special, it would be purple with like an eyeball in the center. And that means a special type move. This symbol right here, the yin-yang, means it's a support move. Or a special type move. Not special, I'm just going to go with support move. Support moves generally don't do damage. They instead will inflict some kind of status effect. So in the case of Growl, it lowers the opponent's attack stat. And in the case of Leer, it reduces the opponent's defense stat. So we have two different status moves, and we have an offensive physical move. We see here the accuracy of that Peck, by the way, is 100%, meaning it generally does not miss. There is always a 1 in 256 chance that it will miss, even with 100% accuracy, but it's very, 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 very rare. And then the power behind that Peck is 35. And because Spearow himself is also Flying type, we can multiply that by 50%, or 1.5, I guess. So overall, it's going to be about 50 power. 53, give or take, overall. So it's much more powerful than a regular Peck. And then if we want to look at Chikorita instead here, Chikorita has... This one's just as powerful as a Peck, but it's normal type. But you'll see it's got a 95% accuracy. Now, I say percent. It's... Even a 5% drop in accuracy is a big deal, because that means there's a much greater chance you're going to miss. And in fact, we've seen Tackle miss quite a bit already. So generally speaking, you want to go with moves that have 100% accuracy power, or 100% accuracy, just for the sake of it. This one's got Growl also, just like Spearow does. Razor Leaf here we see is 55 power, also 95% accurate. But, according to the description, it has a high critical hit ratio, meaning that it will land a critical hit more often. Critical hits just do double damage. And also, when you land a critical hit, you ignore any stat increases your opponent may have. So if your opponent has beefed up their defense to astronomical levels and you crit hit with a physical move, you ignore all those defense increases and just use their flat regular defense value, which is very nice. And then finally we have Poison Powder, which I just got. 75% accuracy, but if it lands, it poisons the target, which is pretty neat. That's not really all that useful for capturing wild Pokemon. That's just for slowly whittling down and leeching power away from Pokemon in a competitive situation. So this is more of a trainer battle move and not a wild Pokemon move. There's definitely a distinction to be made between certain Pokemon that are better at dealing with Pokemon in the wild or dealing with trainer Pokemon. So you'll see there's also something else we haven't looked at yet, and that is the ability of Pokemon. So the ability is over there on the bottom left underneath all the stats for Pokemon. Every Pokemon has an ability. Some Pokemon have more than one potential option for their ability. It's not set in stone. Chikorita is not that way. Every Chikorita you encounter will have Overgrow in this game. Later on, in Generations 5 and onward, there is the potential for Pokemon to have what's called a hidden ability. And there are a lot of various requirements for unlocking a hidden ability, but some of them are really difficult. But because that wasn't introduced yet in this generation, we won't need to worry about it. So every Chikorita has Overgrow. What that means is, once they are below, I think, a third of their health, or at a third of their health or lower, all of their Grass-type moves will be increased in power. And all the starters have this. All the starters have the same ability, right? So every Grass-type starter has Overgrow. Every Fire-type starter has Blaze, I think is what it's called, which is the same thing but for Fire-type moves. And then every Water-type starter has Torrent, which is the same thing but for Water-type moves. And then we have Mr. Spearow here, who has Keen Eye, which is neat. So he can never have his accuracy reduced. So if someone tries to throw Sand Attack at Spearow to reduce his attack accuracy, or a Smoke Screen, Spearow's like, whatever, I've got awesome eyesight, and I ignore that, which is pretty nifty. You see Weedle here has Shield Dust. It blocks the added effects of attacks, which is actually awesome. See, remember when I said that his Poison Sting ability has a 10% chance to poison? If you have Shield Dust, you still take the damage from the attack, but you ignore that potential additional effect. So if you try to shoot a Poison Sting at Weedle, you will never poison it. It'll still take the damage, but it won't be poisoned. Actually, poison types can't be poisoned anyway. It is not possible to poison a poison type. It is not possible to burn a fire type. And it is not possible to freeze an ice type. And actually, that has been expanded in later generations. For example, in Generation 6, you cannot paralyze an electric type. That only started happening in Generation 6 and onward. And also, Grass-type Pokemon in Generation 6 and onward are not affected by, like, Seed or Spore or Powder moves. So, like, Poison Powder would not work on a Grass-type because it's a Powder-based move, or Sleep Powder, or Stun Spore, none of that. Can't use it on a Grass-type in Gen 6 or higher, which is pretty nifty. And then I think they made Ghost-type Pokemon immune to something too, but I can't remember what what it was. At any rate. So we're talking about status conditions now and support-based moves. I've talked a lot about type effectiveness too. There's a whole chart, if you want to look at it. There's plenty of places. Just Google it. Just Google Pokemon effectiveness or type chart. It varies by generation. Actually, that's not true. It stays the same from generation to generation. It's just that some generations have added more types. And I think the only generation to actually modify the existing type chart was Gen 6. Gen 6 added the Fairy type, which was used to balance out a lot of issues with the type effectiveness chart. For example, prior to Generation 6, Dragon-type Pokemon were, like, literally unstoppable. Almost nothing could block them or wall them off, except maybe Steel types. Fairy types were introduced as a way to check Dragon types, and also gave you a reason to run Steel and Poison type moves, because before, Steel and Poison were not very good offensive types. They had very few things they were good against. That being said, in addition to adding the Fairy type, Generation 6 also changed and, removed the resistances that Steel had to Dark and Ghost types. Before, Dark and Ghost were resisted by Steel, now they are not any longer. But because this is before Generation 6, that is still technically applicable. And Wade is already calling me. I just met you like 5 minutes ago. What do you want? He literally just called to tell me nothing. Anyway, so that happens sometimes. Occasionally, people will call you and offer you stuff like, hey, I found a berry, do you want it? Or, hey, I found this really awesome item, do you want it? Or, do you want to battle again and you can refight them? Get some extra experience, that kind of a deal. So here we are in Sprout Tower. This is like a meditation chamber, so to speak, for these monks-looking guys. You'll see the central pillar that's supporting the whole tower is like shaking, which is kind of ominous. Apparently the reason for the shaking is because there's battling going on upstairs. We'll find out. At any rate, it does still shake, by the way, in the original Gold and Silver, which is really cool to watch. These monk guys actually will fight you, by the way. They are Pokemon trainers after all. Because we are in Sprout Tower, the majority of these monk guys... they're sages. The majority of these guys will be having Bellsprouts, because that's just what they'd have. It's called Sprout Tower for a reason. As a result, though, as I mentioned, Spearow will absolutely destroy this place. No questions asked. It's not even really fair. And because these are trainer Pokemon and not wild ones, you actually get a decent chunk of extra experience from them. So the best way to level up Pokemon is in trainer battles, as opposed to fighting them in the wild. That being said, every trainer can generally only be fought once, unless they challenge you to a rematch over the phone or something, but there's very few trainers that you can do that with. And most of them really aren't even worth it at later stages of the game. So, training up high-level Pokemon to be even stronger is quite difficult. The level cap, by the way, is 100. You generally will not find any Pokemon that are level... Like, I lied. The only Pokemon you'll find that are level 1 are freshly hatched Pokemon. And we'll talk about hatching some other time, because that's a long conversation. But yeah, the level cap is 100. You generally, the strongest people, the Elite Four and the Champion, are like right around level 50. Like, they're only halfway to the level cap. But at any rate, so we'll talk more about some trainer stuff and some more interesting information about the game later on. We're going to call it here for right now, and we'll explore the rest of Sprout Tower next time. So until then, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. This has been Seraphin. Stay classy, internets.